Hello and welcome to Connect. I'm your host, Randall. Coming up on today's show, we'll talk to Shaun, Dyck, and Randall from the Saskatoon Housing Initiatives Partnership, or SHIP. And as always, we want to connect with you.
Tweet us at Shaw TV Saskatoon. Find us on Facebook or email shawtvconnect@shaw.ca. You can also watch previous interviews on Shaw TV's YouTube channel at youtube.com/Shaw TV Saskatoon.
Homelessness and affordable housing is a challenge in many cities across North America, but Saskatoon has been at the forefront, and two individuals that are kind of leading that charge are Shaun, Dyck, and Randall, and I've invited them today to give us some background and insight. So, gentlemen, thanks for making time today.
Thanks for having us here.
Shaun, maybe start with you. Can you give us some overview of yourself and the Saskatoon Housing Initiatives Partnership?
Sure. Well, I joined SHIP, as we're known, in 2011, but the company's been in existence since 1999. Came out of a committee from City Hall that was concerned about the amount of affordable housing that was available in neighborhoods across Saskatoon. So the idea behind SHIP is that it would build capacity within the community, especially within the nonprofit sector, to be able to provide affordable housing. Often organizations will want to do a housing project but won't be able to do it because it'll be on the side of their desk, or they won't know all the steps involved or the people to connect with. So that's why SHIP was created, to really build the capacity within the community and then help respond to the amount of affordable housing in Saskatoon. Over the years, we grew within our capacity, and then in 2012, the federal government decided to put out a call for proposals that we responded to. And what that call was for is to deliver funding that the federal government allocates to Saskatoon every year to address homelessness. That's $1 million a year that the federal government's investing in projects for housing units and support services for people that are experiencing or are at risk of homelessness. So we've been delivering that since 2012 and investing in some great projects with some great partners that are really changing the way things are done in Saskatoon. The last round of funding was approved in 2014, and from 2014 to 19, $7 million will be invested. And with all the partners from the federal, provincial, and municipal governments and philanthropists in Saskatoon, we're really doing some great stuff here.
I think that's important to touch on is that maybe, Chris, I could ask you in terms of addressing the homelessness. Yeah. We can't just throw a bunch of money at it. It has to be administered and properly managed and so on. What are you finding on the homelessness end of things that would delve into and maybe branch out into how do you house people like that?
Yeah. Saskatoon is home to some really amazing and innovative agencies who are doing some really great work with the funding that we're able to give them on homelessness. It is a complex problem, and housing people takes some work and some focus. We've been able to put together our homelessness action plan. It was written by SHIP as well as with the United Way and done in consultation with the community. It's got some really great priorities and action points in order to move forward on homelessness in our community. So currently we have around 450 homeless in our community according to our last point in time count done in 2015, and we're making some great progress on that.
When we see the numbers coming in, I think looking at other cities, we can only compare to some northern climates, and mm-hmm. we obviously have winter issues as opposed to southern climates that might have heat to deal with as well. What are you seeing with the numbers of individuals? Are there families? Are there individuals perhaps with some mental challenges that are hard to house and things like that? How do you manage that?
The factors that play into homelessness are often mental health issues like you addressed, as well as addiction issues. There's some long-standing issues around with First Nations people around the effects of colonialism in the residential schools as well. And so, like I said, there are some challenges there, but there's a lot of really great work being done in nonprofit world, with Indigenous-led organizations and other nonprofits to house the homeless in our community. And so there is a challenging thing to address it. There's some challenging individuals for sure, but I think we're making some real progress, and we're housing these individuals. So.
Shaun, when we have a number of individuals that we're looking at in the community, what would be the process that would need to be identified for them to become housed, for instance, or would they have to apply, or do you identify them? How does that process work from your end?
Well, over the last couple of years, we've invested in a process for housing placement. And an agency that has stepped forward and really taken a lead on that is the Saskatoon Indian Métis Friendship Centre. They have created a project called Centralized Intake. And basically what that does is it creates an assessment for individuals that then redirects them to the services that they need. So depending on their acuity, on how homeless they are, if they're chronically homeless, for instance, that's more than 6 months straight of homelessness, or episodically where they're have experienced homelessness 3 times in the past year, then they could be referred to a Housing First project. And that's really taken hold in Saskatoon as of late. It started back in 2013, 2014 with the Journey Home project through Saskatoon Crisis Intervention Services, funded by the United Way. And then that began to expand with more investment from the federal government into Housing First. So the Indian Métis Friendship Centre also offers Housing First, and as does White Buffalo Youth Lodge for Housing First for families. So when we have people that are expressing a need for housing, centralized intake is a main point for people to be redirected to services. Fortunately, we also had the Lighthouse come forward and say that they would like to provide housing placement services as well. What we found is that there's a lot of people that just need a little bit of help just to either fill out a form or get to a place to view it because they don't have transportation. So we have a housing placement worker, Tony, at the Lighthouse, and he's housing people directly out of shelter. And that's making a definite impact. In this first year, he housed 120 people. So that's freed up spaces in the shelter system. It's got people off the streets. It's really a great news story. And really, I'd hope that everybody would feel comfortable to just talk to any agency and ask. The systems are there to help people. It's always a matter of asking and being confident that people are out there to help and want the best for you.
Chris, when we have the individual who is facing just challenges functioning every day, you've done magnificent work in the area. What are some signs and people watching could maybe identify with and maybe know of someone? Is there any method that they could reach out and support them? How would they do that?
I think the best thing for people to do is to connect individuals who are struggling to some of the great services that we have, and everything from food services over at the Friendship Inn to centralized intake, like Shaun mentioned, over at Saskatoon Indian Métis Friendship Centre, housing services at the Lighthouse. I've lived and worked in Riversdale for almost a decade now, and so you do get to know a lot of the people that are out on the street, some of the people that struggle most in our community. You get to know them and know them by name or by face and stuff like that. And I always think, I don't want to be the person who's just walking by, ignoring those individuals, if fate was turned and I happened to be in a situation like that, I would hope somebody would care enough to stop and help me. And so, helping, I think, often is directing people to the agencies that are able to help. And it's very helpful to walk with people and or drive them to some of these services in our community. So.
I think you've touched on that in terms of there's a willingness of the individual to want to do things for themselves, but
Yes.
there are limitations when, we have issues that we can't read, we can't write, filling out that form, getting to where the form needs to be filled out. Shaun, if we're going to look as a wider community, I think that Saskatoon's been at the forefront in terms of outreach and supportive networks. Where would SHIP fit in the larger picture of housing individuals? If we talk about 450, it's not necessarily a house that we're looking at. We're talking about housing units, I would think, right? Where would those networks for people that need housing, where would they go? Would they go to your office? Would that be from social services or from the agencies themselves? What's that link for them?
Well, really the link is directly with the service providers and the housing providers. SHIP is a facilitator within the city, really facilitating conversations, facilitating projects, either through capacity building, business planning, or funding. We aren't necessarily a direct service agency where we help place people to and direct them to agencies. That's what centralized intake's for. But as well, all the agencies are well connected. So walking into, say, Comfy on 20th Street or the West Side Clinic, if you need services, they know where some of the places that you would want to go are. Everybody's prepared to help wherever they can. And what we try to do, and what we've been achieving with some of our networking, is to bring people together to understand what each other are doing. And that is part of the Homelessness Action Plan, to increase knowledge across the community, to know that everybody has a role within the community to help with homelessness, and of course the need for affordable housing. It'll never end, it seems, considering how the demand is and how incomes don't seem to rise as fast as housing prices. But we're confident that these conversations that we're having are helping people talk and also understand that they're facing the same challenges. And when they are, that's when we can bring a plan together and then work for those common solutions that we all need.
We're going to take a break right away and come right back with Shaun, Dyck, and Chris Randall talking about affordability of housing and homelessness.